hello, and thank you for joining us today. We have a great session planned. If you don't know who I am, my name is Antoinette Ball. I'm one of the founders of WEOP, and we also have Meredith on the call, which is the co-founder of WEOP. And we are doing something new now that we call our Pacesetter Labs. And one thing that we wanted to do with our audience and with our WEOP members is to have sessions where we go deep into information that we can provide business owners with valuable information that they can utilize to take their businesses to the next level. And having a topic like response to strategies, learning about RFPs, RFIs, and RFQs, and also sources sought notices, we think is extremely valuable for entrepreneurs and business owners that are seeking to pursue federal contracting and also private contracting. So today what we're going to do is provide you with an overview. Now, we cannot cover everything in total detail, because if you're ever taking one of WEOP's contracting classes, you know that the federal contracting class could be like a 12 to 14-hour course. So today we're going to try to provide you with as much information, give you a broad overview. So when you walk away with the workshop today, at least you have a working knowledge. And it provides you with a lot. And then we have resources, because this is a workshop. So the studying we'll be covering in the workshop is going to be very important. For example, we're going to refer back to the Federal Acquisition Regulation, and we're going to have some action items, because we don't want the workshop to stop here, that the information that we present, it may seem like it's a lot, but we still want you to refer back to it and study the information. That's so important as we get through this particular workshop. So I'm going to say hello, and also, even though we're virtual, use the chat box to say hello to someone, to share your business information, because it's all about networking as well. So just say hello to everyone. If you want to share your website, if you want to share your information, if you want to share a resource, we're going to utilize the chat box. We're also going to utilize the chat box as Varsha is doing her presentation. I would be monitoring the chat box. So if you want to make a comment, or if you have a question, because we're going to make this really interactive, feel free to put it in the chat box. And as Varsha is going through her presentation, we will be referring back to the chat box as well. But what I also want to share with the audience is that we have an exciting new tool at WEOP. It's called Business Assessments. And I wanted to let everybody know on the call that if you're interested in getting into federal contracting or really strengthening your federal contracting, we have a tool that will ask you customized questions. And depending upon how you answer these questions, you get a business assessment back. So we will send some information out in our newsletter about WEOP's new business assessments, because that's an interactive tool to provide you with yet some additional information about pursuing federal contracting. As you know, we are in the fourth cycle, in the last cycle for federal contracting. And as we look forward to 2023, it is so important to get ready for all the opportunities that women-owned small businesses can pursue. So that's why this Pacesetter workshop is so important for us. So what I'm going to do is introduce Varsha, our speaker for the day, and I will be bouncing off of her and adding my 2 cents in. So let me tell you a little bit about Varsha, who Varsha is, our facilitator today. Varsha is a WEOP business advisor. She's been with us about 6 months. She's also what you call an enterprise solutions manager with the V Group, a public sector service provider. In her current position, she's involved with establishing new business units globally, including, but not limited to, opportunity mapping, business projections, and business planning. Varsha is a certified design thinker. So if you want to know a design thinker, please ask her. She's also the thinking co-creator and program manager who's currently leading multiple complex IDIQ projects for public sector agencies. So Varsha, where are you?
Hey guys, thank you so much, Antoinette, for such a wonderful introduction. I mean, when you hear somebody else talking about yourself, right?
And one thing I can say, Varsha, because Varsha lives this stuff, she's doing it every day for a major company. And I thought she would be great to kind of walk us through what's going on and provide information that can help you take your business to the next level. So I will be bouncing off of you, Varsha. And again, please utilize the chat if you want to make a comment, or you want us to pay close attention to something. I'll be watching the chat, and we're going to start getting into the conversation. So Varsha, I'm going to turn her, and anything else you want to share about what you do as a business would be useful. Please do so as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's so good to see those beautiful faces, right? I mean, when everybody is on the camera, it just makes it so interactive. So this is amazing. Nice to meet you all. In addition to what Antoinette just said, so the firm that I work with, we have been in the business for the past 23 years. We started working with the public sector agencies ever since we were established. And right now we have expanded more towards federal. So we do from the 500,000 discretionary procurement to a $250 million IDIQs that are spanned over 5 to 7 years. So we do cover a wide range of contracts within state and federal. And my work in that is pretty much capture and growth. So I make sure that we are mapping the opportunities correctly. I make sure that we have all the insider quote unquote information that we might collect about the agency, who is the current service provider, how they're doing work with them, things of that nature that actually helps you create your strategy that you're going to present to the agency. So that's what I do. Well, without any delay, let's get into
Varsha,
this.
let me ask you a question, because I'm thinking before we start, maybe we could get an idea in terms of the experience of the people on the call. So maybe in the chat box, I could just say how much experience you have in federal contracting, and then they could say little experience, no experience, or very experienced. So if everybody on the call could kind of gauge, that way we can kind of curtail the conversation around people on the call. So if you could use the chat box, let us know your experience with federal government contracting. And you could do that in a very succinct, little experience, no experience, some, etc. So I see 6 years, none,
Yeah.
None.
Okay.
Okay, keep it coming. No experience, no experience. Some. No direct experience. Okay. Researching options. Okay. Some experience. I have experience with contracting. Okay, so it looks like we have kind of 20 years. Oh, okay, 20 years as a subcontractor. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think we are getting a very good blend of responses, which I see majority of them are without the experience. So we'll still keep it like within the ranges of, okay, let's assume that you're starting off with it and what kind of information you can actually lead. Because I mean, in my opinion, even to date, we have been doing it for 23 years. I think even to date, there are a lot of information that we still have to kind of, figure out. There is no set system to do that. It's just that the more that you know about the resources available to you, the better it becomes. The more acquainted you are with the researches and where to find information, the better it gets over the period of time. So I'm going to keep it towards that.
So Varsha, would you agree there's always something to learn?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, say that again.
I said there's always something to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. All right, guys, so let's start with this. We have kept the agenda kind of from a very, very overview. Like, we are going to cover some of the things that are very important to know, and we'll just cover like the overview of that. There are a lot of research that kind of that is required after this presentation. So this presentation is going to be available to you. And, there are links available on this presentation, so you can always refer back to those. I hope that is helpful. So to start off with, for any of the organization, we are going to start with the prerequisites. So some of the things that you necessarily need that are going to help you kind of have the basics clear before you get into the contracting space. The next step, we will cover what are exactly RFIs, RFQs, and RFPs, and SSMs, things like that. So we'll understand what the importance is of all these different solicitation notices. We'll also understand how do you identify, where do you find such solicitation notice, such information notice, because I think that could be one of the big questions. Okay, how do I find that? Then the market research, which in my opinion is literally everything there is about contracting and building your strategy. So market research is a very, very important aspect of any government contracting. More so because when you compare private and public sector, the amount of information that government agency or federal agencies they provide you is tremendous. You hardly get that anywhere else. You don't get that much of information, at least in my opinion, in the private sector. So I think there is abundance of resource available, which people can definitely utilize. And then some of the success tips. So some of the prerequisites that we can look at, and guys, feel free to kind of, send your questions, things like that about the registration. Where do I get some kind of identification number, things like that. So company profile, this is very important for you to kind of, register your company into the unique entity ID. So they have recently upgraded the portal. So make sure that your company is registered there. This presentation contains a link right here where you can go and you can acquire that number. SAM.gov is going to give you a lot of visibility into the procurement opportunities and various kind of solicitation, the solicitation notices, age code certifications, etc. So I think this is the base of where you want to definitely start off with. You don't want to end up like, okay, I do have an opportunity that I have information about, but I don't know where to begin with. The next step is your insurance requirements. I mean, I always suggest companies to get the maximum line of credit that is possible from your insurance provider. So at least you are covered to a point that is possible. And every solicitation is going to look at the insurance requirements differently, and every solicitation can have a different requirement, but this is something that you should really check out as to what is the limit on your line of credit. Now, digital presence and branding, I think, needless to say, post-COVID, public sector was one of the verticals that were not like focusing so much on the digital presence and okay, let me look at the vendor's website and things like that. But it has changed. People are looking you up, people are looking at your LinkedIn pages, people are looking at your digital presence and things like that, websites very importantly. So I always suggest companies to make sure that your website is conveying your story in the most compelling way there is. One of the very good sources, especially for the companies that are just starting, I've heard some of the members have 6 years or 20 years of experience in this case, so I think they are very, very familiar with this. But for the newer companies, Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. So every agency, every federal agency has its own OSDBU and the dedicated staff. Getting the information of it is very easy. You should make sure that you are in connect with people responsible for, achieving that utilization goal within that agency. They conduct pretty often, actually. We have one of the event coming up that I'll talk about at the end of the presentation. But they do they're very active in connecting with the small businesses. They are always there to help you identify, okay, where do I find the procurements? How do I get certain information? Where do I get the forecast report? Things like that. So this is going to be your best friend if you are going to be successful in this. So all the SBDCs and OSDBUs are going to be a very good friend of yours. Then we have the certification. If you don't have the certification, don't panic. You can always, as far as the SBS certification standards are concerned, your business can qualify as a small business. And for some procurements, that is enough. In other procurements, you need that certification. So just make sure that you have the certification that you can achieve. It's a time-consuming process, not too much, but it does consume time. So make sure that you invest that time and you acquire those certifications. They are very helpful if you want to work as a prime contractor for a set aside, which is only meant for small businesses that are certified. Or you can utilize this to work as a subcontractor, which I'm sure some of the members are working as a subcontractor. So you can utilize those certifications because there are utilization goals and prime contractors look for companies that have the certification. So I think this is something everybody should definitely look up. Make sure that you have your NICS codes because all the procurements are either identified by SICs, FSCs, or NICS codes. To make sure that you have all the details of your NICS code always handy. And in my case, at least, since we are the information technology service provider, we have a bunch of different, 5415S categories. So we have like a bunch of different NICS code that we have to put in our proposals when we are sending that out. So make sure if there could be more than one NICS code that is working for your business. And then last but not the least, this is where I think there's going to be one of the starting point for you to start looking at the solicitation, which is sam.gov, register your company, make your account. This is going to be the portal where you are going to find the solicitations and things like that. So I'm not sure, Antoinette, do we have any questions as far as the prerequisites are concerned? Not really, right?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just want to add something because regarding your certification with the SBA, make sure that also you get the EDWSB. And remember, we're not talking about third-party certifications on this call. We're specifically talking about SBA certification. So just kind of wanted to distinguish that. A lot of people get confused with
Right.
that. So the EDWSB is also very important along with the WSB. So just wanted to emphasize that. And I think we're fine. I don't see any questions regarding
Right,
the
perfect.
requisites yet.
So wherever this document is shared with the members, I have also included the SBA size standards, so they can just look at the company's mixed code and identify whether or not they qualify as a small business, which I'm sure in this case, we shouldn't have any difficulty qualifying as a small business. Now, next up, so this is something, and again, I mean, I wish there was a simpler way to understand the acquisition regulation, but this is unfortunately going to be a very long and time-consuming read for the members. But I strongly encourage you to kind of, read through these federal acquisition regulations, because all the acquisitions are governed by FAR. So you should definitely look into that, because it not only just outlines all the regulations, it also gives you a lot of good tips. For example, there's part 10 in it, which talks about market research. So you're going to get the information about a lot of resources that are available to you, some of the links that you can refer to. So I'm just going to open this up. Hold on. There you go. So the way that this is from part 1 through 48. I think this is going to be most useful to you. And within this, there is part 10, which I find very helpful. This is the market research tab right here. And they also have the contracting by negotiation. This is something we'll talk about later in the presentation, but I think this part 15 could be a very good resource for all the businesses to understand how can you bring in your point of negotiation while working with the agency, making sure that you're not violating any contractual regulations, things like that. Then they, sorry, go on, Antoinette.
Yeah, I was good. I would going to add on that part 19 is so important as well, because we tell all of our entrepreneurs start with part 19 so they understand how they can leverage those socioeconomic programs. So that's very, very important.
Absolutely. And this is where this is going to be a very good resource to you. So it has the scope, it has size standards, how you can utilize the relationship, where you can build the relationship. I think there's a very good resource repository, in my opinion. So definitely check this out. And this, again, all of this is free service. You don't have to like make an account or anything like that. So definitely give it a go. Now, next up, when we look at the solicitation process, a procurement process, right? In my initial days, when I was just learning how to do it, I was just kind of into the research and analysis with this company. One of the things that we used to do was really understanding where the information is, understanding the procurement before it is even a formal bid. And that's where the pre-solicitation comes into the picture. And this is such a good resource because agency gives you a lot of opportunity to build relationship. Trust me, pre-solicitation is that opportunity to build relation. So pre-solicitation is basically they send out the request for information, mostly request for information and source sought notice to check the, as we call it, market pulse. What is available to them? What kind of capabilities contractors have? What kind of, in case if they release the request for quotation, they're trying to find out, okay, what should be a good pricing for the service? So this actually gives you a very, very open window to talk to procurement officers and then the contracting officers, kind of understand a little bit more what the agency is doing, because you're not in the formal bid process yet. Once you are in that formal process, then all communications have to be strictly to the contracting officer within the periphery of that bid. So you don't have a lot of wiggle room there, but in cases of pre-solicitation, you actually do have that. So we'll talk a little bit more about it. So there are majorly 4 stages. You have pre-solicitation, which is before the bid is out. Agency is trying to figure out what the market looks like. Do we have enough capability around the vendors and service providers, things like that. Then there is a solicitation process. Now, based on the pre-solicitation, a lot of time I have seen that happening, that agencies at times end up creating a procurement only for a few vendors. because, and they call it a no compete, like they are only going to release it to a very close group of vendors. They don't release it as a public procurement. So sometimes that happens too, and that's your way to negotiate a solicitation which is tailored for your company. Point of negotiation is something Antoinette was talking about at the beginning of this presentation. This is very important. So you have to make sure that you get that window to build the relationship and understand the agency, what their plans are, how they are going to utilize the service, what their forecast looks like, how their current vendor is working. That's your point of negotiation. Can you give them ideas? Can you offer them service packages, which is better than what they're getting right now? So you have a lot of flexibility to literally market your services in your business. So this is very, very important that you participate in the request for information, source sort notices, things like that before a formal bid is out. Because once you are in that bid process, you are really in the competition against the small, large, very large businesses. So, and then, this does become kind of complicated. Antoinette, would you like to add anything as far as the negotiation is concerned?
Yeah, I would like to share a strategy because a lot of times we're thinking about where do we go to get this information. So when you showed the slide about the acquisition.gov, if they go on acquisition.gov, also that site is the place for the forecast reports. So basically, as you're looking for federal contracting, if you go to acquisition.gov, navigate down to I think it's procurement, go to the main page, acquisition.gov, the landing page. And then if they navigate down to procurement forecast, click on procurement forecast. And what pops up are all the federal agencies. And then the federal agencies, everybody has a different kind of format, but on these particular sites, they can actually look at the forecast reports. And then that gives them the opportunity to see basically a forecast report, what's projected out, who the contracting officer will be. And that's how they can start their market research. So that is where the important negotiation could begin in building that relationship. Would you not agree, Kate? Would you not agree, Varsha?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we actually had another session dedicated towards the forecast report as to how do you look into it, how do you understand forecast report, where do you find them, things like that. So this is actually, imagine yourself in the position that you're trying to market your services to the agency, and you are literally getting all the information about what they are going to procure in that year. I mean, nothing gets better than that. And that's the beauty of working with the federal government or public sector agencies in general. So I think I encourage everybody to look at the forecast report. This is going to be a little tedious to look at, but once you get the hang of it, it's a very good resource. All right, now moving on. Let's understand the difference between the RFIs, the RFQs, and RFPs. Now, RFI is pretty much request for information, wherein agency wants to release a formal bid, but they haven't. They really want to check the market pulse. And that's where they request a lot of information about, okay, what kind of services your business is providing, what kind of a strength do you have, what kind of customers you have worked with. So there may be a lot of things that they ask in the RFIs, which is pretty much like a couple pages. In some cases, they do have a list of questions that you have to respond to. So this is kind of simple. This is not as extensive as an RFP. But then at the same time, this is a very good window for you to kind of go ahead and talk to the contracting officers, find out what's going on in the agency, find out what could be your window to kind of start building that relationship. So usually this is where we present our ideas and information. If you have more flexible scope, you can actually present your idea, or if you have a product, things like that, anything that suits that service or the service or product category. In the request for quotations, this is where they request very specifically either for a service, a customized off-the-shelf product, or you may have a subscription-based product or resources, whatever there may be. So this is usually a very straightforward. In no way this binds you in a contractual agreement. Even if you have provided a costing or pricing for any of the services, this does not bind you in that pricing. It's just for agency to look at as to what kind of quotations they can receive so that they can create their pricing strategy, they can create their pricing capping accordingly. Request for proposal is, again, as I said, is more formal process where now the bid is out. Okay, you're not supposed to kind of have any conversation with anybody other than the contracting officer in the agency. I mean, unless otherwise specified. So this is where your chances of building relationships is very, very limited. I mean, typically contracting officer or any of the technical, whoever is, involved in reviewing those RFPs, they are not going to kind of, be open to the vendor. So this is more, this is more a formal process out of all the solicitation notices that we have looked at.
Varsha, when they're responding to an RFI or RFQ, would you say that this would be a great time for them to maybe point out any unique differentiator of their businesses to kind of get their foot more into the door with their contracting officer?
Absolutely. I think in 9 cases out of 10, we have seen that there's always a question, what differentiates your business in that service category? So you have a lot of space and you have a lot of window to kind of tell the contracting officer about the unique selling points that you have. It may be cost in some of the cases. It may be a unique service feature that you have. It may be your past experience working with exactly the same kind of agency. So yes, I think this is the great time for them, as I said, build relationship, bring out your unique, abilities as a business, and kind of, gather as much information as you can get, because this is eventually going to turn out to be an RFP, a formal bid notification. Based on this information, they are going to create an RFP. And many times I've seen vendors negotiating a single source notice based on the RFI. Okay, you have a company that has exactly the services that agency is looking for. They might just release the award to you based on the discretionary procurement if they have the ability. So the possibilities could be a lot.
So Varsha, would you not say that at this point, at the RFI or the RFQ, it could be the possibility for a women-owned small business or economically disadvantaged women-owned small business or minority-owned business for it to turn into a sole source or a set-aside award leveraging those certifications?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it usually turns out to be. So if they have a low value procurement where they don't have a lot of qualified vendors for it, they can actually give out a single source or, anything similar of that nature, that kind of award to that business that they were talking to. So yes, this is a very good opportunity.
So we want to keep emphasizing the point, what we call the point of entry or the point of negotiation, to say that as business owners, we all have somewhat, we can influence those decisions. And that's why we encourage our entrepreneurs to go after the RFIs, RFQs, and source of salt notices so they can influence that. And I've known situations where it actually turned into a sole source or set aside award because of them presenting that unique differentiator. It could even be something geographical to secure that award. So this is a great, as we say, POE or PON, point of negotiation, to turn it into an opportunity for your business. So I think we want to keep emphasizing that over and over, because a lot of times as business owners, we think that action starts with the bid, when in fact, it could start at these points, at the RFI or RFQ points of reference.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I'll share one of my experience. So not necessarily federal. We were working with state of Texas. We were working with this DFW airport. And we were having a lot of roundtables with the prospective vendors that they had. They released an RFI and they were requesting a lot of information. Okay, what kind of technology solutions do you have? They were looking for a customized off-the-shelf sort of solution. We did present our solution, and out of, I think, all the 30 vendors that they talked with, they only had 2 vendors that were providing those solutions. So they did their market research, and at the end of the day, they actually released a set aside, which was, again, under the discretionary procurement up to 500,000. So yeah, that at times that definitely helps, and that actually gives you a relationship that you have already built with the contracting officer that you can utilize in upcoming procurements with the agency. So once again, I think it is all relationship driven. This is your window to build relationship. At the RFP stage, it becomes extremely difficult to do that.
And which, Varsha, another thing we don't really cover in this particular presentation, but again, as that relationship builds, it could even mean that it could result in a simplified acquisition. Because if the threshold is under $250,000, then that contracting officer can still make a decision to award you a contract from that
Right, without the
RFI.
competitive bid. Mhm.
Right. For anybody who's not familiar with what a simplified acquisition is, and can you explain it, Varsha?
Okay, so in the simplified acquisitions, this is where they are not procuring services or material for a very high value, as Antoinette said, this is 250,000. And this gives
Or less.
them,
Yeah.
or lesser, actually, the capping is $250,000. In this, they can, they can select a vendor based on the information that was provided, and they can make a decision at their discretion to award that simplified acquisition to that particular vendor. So there is going to be no competitive bid process. You don't have to go through the entire formal bid process, and the contracting officer can actually decide whether or not they want to award that solicitation to you.
Any questions? Any comments? If you do, please put them in the chat. We'll monitor the chat. But that was a really good explanation of all those different solicitations. Thank you, Varsha.
No problem at all. I think we also have like a lot of glossary, as we call it, in terms of like understanding what these terms mean, because especially for the businesses that are starting anew, source sort notice, single source, simplified procurement. I mean, sometimes that does become kind of difficult to understand. So we do have a glossary of term available in the previous presentations for that.
Varsha, something I always mention in my class, I always tell people that Dave Ramsey is a really big federal contractor. And it's like, Dave Ramsey, I said, yes, because he sells, he talks about financial literacy. And because he has, when you talk about unique differentiator, he's the only person doing financial literacy classes that relate to the military. So he actually created military workbooks to talk about financial literacy. And that is his unique differentiator. And he actually has set aside contracts because nobody is doing that particular subset. So he's a great example of like what you call a unique differentiator. And it qualified him to actually get you could say sole source contract, because no one else is coming with the military financial books that he created just for the federal government.
Right, absolutely. I mean, there is no point going into the competitive process when you don't have the competition for that thing, right? I see Kimberly's response. I was unaware of the simplified acquisition processes. I mean, in a lot of cases, people are not aware. So at least that's good to know. All right. As we were talking, this is probably going to be the repeat of what Antoinette and I were just talking. So the benefits of responding to an RFI and source sort notice. This is where, we cannot emphasize on that enough. This is the point where you get that opportunity to, really tell the agency what the capability of your businesses are. How do you distinguish yourself from the competition, where relationship, abilities, whatever, you can bring on the table. It also gives you a very good idea, and that's where it links back to that market research we have been talking about. It gives you an idea about what has been going on in the agency, what are the challenges that they have been facing. Sometimes we get to know, okay, they are going to come up with the procurement. What's happening with the current vendor? What are the challenges with the current vendor that they are facing? What other insight you can get? Any of the projected plans that they have that is causing this procurement to come up. So you get a lot of those good information, which can influence the way that you're going to create your proposal and the way that you're going to present your services. So I think this is a very good input to have. A lot of time companies, while marketing their services, that's what they lack. They lack what the customer actually needs. This is where you get that information, what customer actually needs, and you can present your services to the best of its ability that are meeting those needs. And then, as Antoinette said, you can actually influence the acquisition strategy. If the agencies are going to see that, okay, you are the company who's providing services and the services are exactly the match for what they're looking for. And if it happens to be a low dollar value contract, I mean, you do have close to an 80% of the chance of winning that acquisition without even going into the competition. So I think responding to these two, and it also keeps you active in the process, get to know the agency, get to know what's going on, get to know your playground that you're trying to, build your company at. So as we said, both of these solicitation notices are very, very good source to start with.
Varsha, which basically is saying that you can get an opportunity that's no bid. So you don't have to always enter the market, try bidding. Your goal is to leverage that, influence that acquisition strategy, and maybe negotiate for yourself a sole source set aside, or as we call it, a simplified acquisition, which is very important. And I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, they're not even familiar with what a simplified acquisition is. And therefore, if you're having a conversation with the contracting officer, if you're not aware of that, then you can maybe put that on the table as an option. So if you're aware that you're having a conversation, you can say, well, did you consider doing a simplified acquisition, or and making sure you're familiar with the sole source and set aside, so you can have those in-depth conversations with the CO officers. And hopefully your strategy is to talk yourself into a contract opportunity because you have a unique differentiator.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think that glossary of terms, I think that's also available on acquisition.gov, or some of the forecast reports that members are going to see at acquisition.gov. The glossary is available that tells you what different kind of acquisitions are there. Okay, so what I've done here, I've included a very quick sample. I mean, once again, this is just from the sam.gov portal. So I'm going to show you quickly as to how an RFI looks like and how you can search some of those on the sam.gov portal. Once again, RFI is where the agency is looking at the insights from the market. They are looking at who are the vendors that are available, what kind of capabilities they are bringing on the table. So they're gathering all the insight that they can before they actually go into creating a formal request for proposal. So I'm just going to click on this. Okay. So I'll also walk you through as to how you can find this. So actually, you know what? Let's just start with this. So this is sam.gov portal. This is their search database. And when you go in, it'll actually ask you, what is it that you want to search? So let's just say,
sorry, they have to actually register on here, the business, right? Wanted to make sure that in order to search out, you still have to register as a business entity, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I may not have access to a lot of information since I'm not signed in right now. But again, this database is, the structure of this database is going to remain as it is, even when you sign in and you are logged in as an entity. So let's just say I'm going to look at the contract opportunities. If you know what agency you want to go for, you can actually put the agency code, name, whatever. You can search this from either of those two things. So you can put that here. So it actually helps you narrow down. Now, let's look at the notice type. So when you click on the notice type, you have multiple filters. So special notices are actually the notices about the event, the awards, the rebid, things like that. But majority of the focus should be on source sort and pre-solicitation. Solicitations is where your actual RFPs are. So this is where you're going to get the RFPs, in some case RFIs too. I still feel that the database is not that well categorized. So sometimes you have to look through 1, 2, and 3 before you actually get an RFI or RFP. The other thing which is very important is your NICS code. So for example, I'm just going to put computer system designer related services, and I'm going to go into solicitation. And that's where you can actually see if this is an actual RFP or this is an RFI. Sometimes you can also go into, say, source sort, and this is where you see all the source sort notices. Let me remove the solicitation right here. So you can see what kind of, for example, in source sort, sometimes you also get the RFI, things like that. So this is a good database for you to kind of, look at what is available, what is coming up, things like that. So let me go back to the example that I want to take. So this is one example of the RFI. Those are requests for information. Usually you will have all the general information, right? What is the published date? What is the response date? What is the classification? For example, it says original set aside, product and service code, so you can match whether or not this is for your business. Then you have the NICS code. This is good. Place of performance, if it is not written, especially in the cases of information technology services, it is not written, but many cases they can give you a place of performance. So this gives you an idea whether or not you'll be able to provide service in that geography. Now you see here, you basically have a quick introduction as to what this RFI is about. They'll give you typically a background as to why they need it. They will also give you a point of contact. And this is where it becomes very, very important. I mean, whenever I look at the RFI, I usually reach out to the person who is allocated for this, just to kind of, get an idea. Hey, are you going to have a vendor meet? Are you having any kind of, roundtables for this? Things like that. Now, you will also see some of the documentations. For example, let's look at this SOW. So SOW is basically a statement of work where they lay out all the things that they are looking for and what their project scope is, what is it that they are kind of, wanting to procure. So they'll give you the general information as to what do they want to procure, the additional requirements, place of performance, period of performance, things like that. So there's a very small one. Usually in some of the RFIs, you'll have that in form of questions. So tell us more about your business. What kind of service have you performed kind of, related to service? What kind of agencies you have worked with? Things like that. So this can always vary, but in majority of the cases, RFIs are pretty small, I would say. It doesn't take a lot of time to kind of, respond to that. So yeah, although at times businesses think that RFI is not going to secure them a contract, but on the contrary, this can actually be your pathway to securing that contract. Antoinette, would you like to?
Because I hear it, that's what I have from entrepreneurs. They're like, I don't want to waste my time doing an RFI or RFQ. And we keep emphasizing you're not wasting your time. You're building that relationship with that contracting officer, which is so valuable and so important. And like Varsha said, they're usually not even lengthy. A sources sought or RFI or RFQ may only require you to submit 2 or 3 pages. So that's why I say this is so important in terms of you building that relationship and the possibility of turning that into maybe a sole source set aside. So, I mean, at this point, I think it's very, very important.
Yes, absolutely. So RFIs at times, I mean, as I showed you the SAM.gov database, at times it may be kind of, you'll have to navigate it a couple of times before you actually become comfortable with it. There are a lot of filters to put, which I think are great because you can really narrow down that opportunity for your business. You can put the next code, you can put the, the agency that you want to go for if you have that insight. So you can get a lot of like filters to really zero down and you're going to get the results that are going to be, important for you.
So we recommend that as you just get familiar with it, spend time, devote 30 minutes every week, just start off slow. But once you understand how to navigate, it becomes second nature. So we encourage you because they're changing all these federal databases, but get in there, get to know it, make it a point to go there every other day or something. Just kind of get familiar with it so you can be on top of what's available for you as a small business owner.
Absolutely. And one thing I would also like to say, I mean, information is available. Anybody who says that there is no information, I mean, I don't think that is accurate. You have to know and you have to understand where and how to access it. What's the importance of that information? For example, a lot of time, I don't think companies give enough credit to the forecast reports, but I think they are very important. They are very important, at least, I look at the forecast report of the agency and I have the whole layout that they have planned out for their entire year. And I can go to the contracting officer with that knowledge and with that understanding that, okay, you're going to come up with this. Let me kind of, talk about this or that, whatever is good for your business. So I think that kind of information, making sure that you have that information handy is important. As source sort notice, once again, it's a very small response. If you really look into it, so I'm going to open this example in a bit. But this is a good time to actually showcase your capabilities, showcase your experience. Some members I saw that they have worked as a subcontractor, bring that experience up. You have experience working with the federal agencies. That is a very big plus point. And if your business is involved into providing a service, which is kind of unique, bring that up. This is the time to do it. And this can influence a lot of procurement decisions that these procurement officers or contracting officers are going to make over the period of time, especially in the cases where there is necessarily a small business utilization goal or the procurement has the potential to go into a set aside. Now, when you look at the source sort notices, I'm just going to pull up an example. So there's the one that came out on September 6th, and the respond date is October 4th. So you do get a lot of time to look into it. And usually this is the good thing, right? I mean, none of the notices are going to be okay. It came out today and you have to respond in like 2-3 days. You get sufficient time. So I think there's a very good add-on. So you get basically all the information as to what kind of product, services, etc. they are requesting for. The place of performance, if your business cannot work in that state or you don't have the means to work in that state, so yeah, it becomes a qualifier for you to either select or reject a solicitation notice, whether or not you'll be able to work in that. Definitely read through this description. I know it kind of looks long, but it gives you this is the summarized version of what you're going to see in the document. There's the background of the information that you would actually look for in the long run. So it's going to take time, but look through it. In a lot of cases, they might give you a link to additional document attachments. In some of the cases, they don't need to have a link. Because a lot of source sort notices are like, they are going to give you a scope, they're going to give you a background, they're going to give you, okay, this is what they are looking for. And you just have to submit your capability statement. At least in the 70% of the cases, this is what I've seen. Right here, if you'll see right here, it says submitted capability statement shall include the following. So these are the things that you have to include. And this will give you a specific set of questions that you should respond to. There is no page limit. So yeah, do add it, but don't make it too long. Keep it to the point. Keep it very, very relevant. Being relevant is the key. Company name, address, DUNS number, UEI number, since they have shifted to this portal. Then the business size, if you have any certifications, if you categorize into any of the WSB HubZone certified businesses, things like that. If you have any of the GSA contract, all the way better, especially if the agency procures through GSA, which is great. Now, demonstrate expertise in supporting all 12 task areas outlined above. These are the task areas that they are talking about. When you are preparing your capability statement, and this is something that I always tell my team internally, and it took me quite some time to kind of instill that value. It's not really about how flashy can you make your content. It's really about adding that weight, respond to it to the point, add something that can substantiate what you're talking. For example, they might talk about, okay, I'm looking for a user experience service, right? I can give them a lot of different user experience charts and graphs and all the high shine images, but then I have to substantiate that with a work experience that I have done this for this customer. I think that's your sustenance of the content that you're writing, which is very important. And I think businesses often invest into a good content creation and somebody who can create a very good content for them. They should do it. There are a lot of other resources available from, small business development centers. There's resources available from OSDPU, SBAs that are going to help you create that response. There are a lot of field representatives that are available that are going to work with you. There's PTAC available, for the proposal responses and things like that. So this was an example of the source sort notice.
Varsha, go down a little bit to number 3. I wanted to clarify on the certification portion.
I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. And wanted to emphasize that they're interested, when they do these, they're interested in certifications from the SBA exclusively.
Right.
So, may not be advantageous to say I'm, with another entity, but focusing on your certifications specifically from the SBA. Because remember, this is for federal contracting. So kind of wanted to emphasize that.
Right, absolutely. So what is happening right now is in my company that we have certifications from 20 different states. We have with two different national agencies. We have from US PAC, but then again, for the federal, we have to make sure that we are having the WSB certification by SBA as well as from VBank, which is both are like the accepted authorities to give that certification. So make sure that you are getting certified from the agency that is credible to give that certification. So either SBA, and SBA actually is going to tell you the agencies that are, that can certify you.
Varsha, would you say it would be a good idea for them to test their capability statement?
Oh yeah, that's exactly what they're asking for. So
Okay.
here, if you'll see, so the capability statement, so in majority of the cases, source sort notices, they ask you to present their capabilities. So they're trying to understand what are the sources of services or product that is available. So usually they're going to give you a very good outline. So this is here, for me, it's an outline. For me, this is a guideline as to what are the things that I have to include and how I can, tweak my capability statement that can address the scope that they're talking about right here, as relevant as I can make it.
So for anybody who's on the call who stated that they have no experience with federal contracts, we want to emphasize that having a strong capability statement is number one. It's like your resume for business. So if you don't have one now, you want to pursue federal contracting. I mean, really, this is the time to really start creating, make sure that you do your capability statement. There are a lot of templates available for you to do that, because as you pursue these opportunities, if it's an RFI, RFQ, sources sought notice, you are definitely going to need your capability statement.
Right. And I think to your point, what you're saying is right here, they say, history of past performance, the technical capability outlined in your response must demonstrate knowledge and experience. So it's okay if you don't have that experience of working with the federal agencies prior to this one, but your technical capabilities should be directly relevant to the scope area, and that's your way of getting in. So, in a lot of times when we have responded to the source sort notices, we have actually, if we didn't have the experience working with that particular agency, we have included our experience working with other customers. Public sector respects the commercial experience as much as any other experience. I think somebody has a question. I saw somebody raising the hand.
Let me see.
That's me.
Okay, go ahead.
Romance, yes. So just to be clear, because I've been working as a subcontractor for for a number of primes and other organizations, I can put that on my capability statement, correct? The companies that we did work with, the primes, right. So I can put that, okay, and my role. Do I have to label that on my capability statement that it was a subcontracting? It was subcontracting, and name the companies? Because like mine have been like state, most of them have been state and federal.
Okay, so there could be two ways. Either you can choose not to mention it unless otherwise is specified in the solicitation notice. So sometimes you'll see the solicitation notices or RFPs that are going to say that subcontracting experience would not be considered as a direct experience towards the relevant experience goal. So if it is not written in the RFP, I mean, if I was you, I'm going to put all my experience. If I want to be like a little more forthcoming, I'm going to mention, okay, work with this company as a subcontractor. But in a lot of cases, it's not even needed. The only thing that matters, if they have mentioned in the RFP the subcontracting experience will not count towards relevant experience, then that becomes a challenge. At that point of time, you have to specify that there's a subcontracting experience. Because sometimes you'll see the evaluation criteria, as they call it in a lot of RFPs. They're going to talk about your certifications. Your business should be in these many years in the business. You should have at least 5 years of experience working with the whatever agency in that domain. So if it is not that stringent, I usually include all the subcontracting experience that we have with like Deloitte's and Booz Allen's. We include that as our experience.
All right, thank you.
No problem at all. Okay. So I guess source sort notices are a very good place to start, and they give you an opportunity to put your capability statement together. So I think definitely people should participate in that. Now, request for proposal is a whole beast in itself. I mean, I could have a dedicated session for this, but then very quickly to walk you through this. And a lot of time, the big issue with RFPs is businesses don't know which RFP to go for, you know. So what we do in this case, we do a go, no go analysis, which is very simple. We look at the evaluation criteria. We look at the minimum requirement criteria. I'm not even going to look at the scope. I'm going to look at the minimum requirement criteria. If it says that the company should have, say, 7 years of experience of working on the K-12 project, providing such kind of software, I'm not going to participate in that. If it says that your general liability insurances requirement should be at least 20 million, you should give the coverage until 20 million. I mean, you have these things to kind of look at before you kind of, even look at participating in that RFP. So they always, I think in 95% of the cases, they're going to very clearly mention those evaluation criteria. So always look for evaluation criteria. They are very clearly listed. It's very easy to spot. A lot of the RFP documents are actually linked with the table. So you can just go through the table of content. You can look at the evaluation criteria or minimum requirement. You can click on that. It's going to take you to the page and just look at whether or not you can take it. A lot of time, I also encourage companies to create a capability matrix. Capability matrix is basically, you look at the scope, and this could be for any of the business. Look at the scope. You list down all the scopes that, all the different areas of the scope that is mentioned. You write down the next column, the very next column in the Excel, you write down, do you have that experience as a prime, as a subcontractor, or you don't have that experience? If you have that experience, great. On the next column, just gonna kind of include all the details of that experience that I've done, from what period to what period I have work on that particular service, things like that. It gives you an idea. Let's just say if you have 20 different scope areas, if you see that you are really not having, if you don't have an experience, let's just say 12 of those, it's not going to work out. You have to see that your capabilities are not enough to go for that solicitation. And that's one way to evaluate. It's honestly one way to evaluate.
So Varsha, basically, so people don't waste their time. They should. It's a
300-page document, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna go bonkers doing that. So I think there are quick ways to evaluate, because if you're not meeting that minimum criteria, honestly, you could have all the capabilities in the world, but if you're really not able to meet that minimum requirement, you won't be able to go for that solicitation, unfortunately. So that's right there is your go, no go analysis, in my opinion.
And also, Varsha, wouldn't you say that, because a lot of businesses can be discouraged from the RFP process. It is very time consuming. There are companies that have teams that actually work on RFPs. So we recommend that when they're doing that qualifier or seeing if they want to apply, that make sure they have all that together, because it's time consuming. You could work on RFP for 2 months.
Absolutely. So the quick way, and I do concur with what you're saying, because I do have a team of about 12 people that are doing the response writing like day in and day out. So it's a pretty big effort. And then we have the team of technical SMEs, and we have the market research team, and we have somebody who maintains all the boilerplates. It's a big ecosystem, but I think for the small businesses, the best way to do it is to immediately look for any of the evaluation criteria and go for there without even wasting time reading through. Thank goodness this is just 81 pages, but the biggest RFPs I've seen are like, honestly, 600 pages, and the responses of that could be like triple of that. So yes, it could take a lot of time responding to these.
So this 81 pages basically provides you an overview of the RFP, right?
Correct.
And this is 81 pages.
Yeah, this is 81 pages with just an overview. So for example, if I want to, let me see.
Does someone have a question?
Yeah, I saw somebody raising their hand.
I have a question. This is Lakila.
Hey, Lakila.
Hello. So when you are, as a small business on some of these, we may be partnering with other businesses to be able to meet the need of the contract. would we be specifying that in the when we're saying these are our capabilities based on us partnering with someone or bringing in our own subcontractor to be able to meet the need of the request? Is that something that we would need to specify there, or do you just say this is a part of my capabilities, even though it's, you know, something that you're able to do because of a partnership?
Okay, so there are two ways. Again, as I said, some RFPs are going to specifically tell you that your subcontractor's experience is not going to count towards the past performance. If they do so, then you have to specify that this is your team's performance. If they don't specify that, they're just asking for a general past performance, and you have the capability of adding subcontractors, then, you know, everything goes. Then it's a team's experience all put together.
Gotcha, thank you.
Answer your question?
Yes, it does. It helps.
And also we want to point out that the document that we shared in the beginning, the Federal Acquisition to FAR, they have a whole section on joint venturing and teaming and what's allowable, because even some contracts don't allow you to have a certain percentage of subcontractors. So when you study the FAR, and then you can make sure you study in relation to that particular RFP, they will kind of, like in this 81 page doc, I'm sure they talk about partnerships with joint ventures, right?
Oh, yeah, they do have it right here, you know, small business participation commitment documents. I'm sure they're gonna put up a percentage here and things like that.
And then they will specifically tell you everything about what's acceptable with joint ventures, partnerships, what's the percentage of subcontractors, because some people try to get contracts and are not doing any of the work. So there are actually companies that will get a contract and 95% of the work is for subcontractors. They're not even doing it. And that's why they started having clause saying, if you get this contract, only 40% of the work can go to subcontractors, because they want to ensure that this work is really being done by that company. So again, in the FAR, they have a great section on teaming, joint venturing. And then when you read these RFPs, it will lay everything out for you.
Yeah. So in majority of the RFP, so the reason that RFP documents are so big, one is actually the policy documents that they contain. So they will have a compliance section. They are going to have all the various quality control plans, things like that in this case. And so there are policy documents and all the addendums and annexures attached to that. That's what makes it really large. If you really look into it, your scope and your evaluation criteria, for example, if I were you, I'm just going to honestly look at this too. Past performance questionnaire, attachment 5, and then I might actually look at attachment 6, which talks about the small business participation commitment. And pretty much everything else is a afterthought. I mean, I'm going to look at the past performance. Do I really meet this criteria or not? And then from there on, we'll figure out whether or not we go through the whole thing and respond to it. So usually in some cases, pretty straightforward. They're necessarily going to have either evaluation criteria, past performance criteria, minimum requirement criteria, something like that, which tells you that if you meet such and such and such, then you qualify to participate in this RFP. So that's how we make it simple. That's how we keep ourselves sane, to be honest, going through 10, 15 RFPs every day.
Varsha, do you use the formula, I call it a qualifier formula? So you basically your qualifiers to go through different components to make sure you comply.
Right.
And then
so we call it a go, no-go analysis. I mean, that's just something my team came up with. We call it a go, no-go analysis. Usually just have the place of performance, how many years of experience is required? Are they considering experience as a subcontractor, as a prime? Are they asking specific experience with the agency? How many years of a project experience is needed? Then we look at the financials, what kind of coverages in terms of insurances that we have to give, what kind of subcontracting goal there is, things like that. Do they need a company that is home-based? Home-based as if they are based in that state or not. So sometimes federal agencies are going to ask you to have the office in that particular place where the services are going to be provided. Sometimes they ask for facility clearance in majority of the cases. In our cases, if we are like hosting data, things like that, we're gonna need that facility clearance. So that becomes the evaluation criteria. So we include these things. Compliance, we actually categorize that broadly into 3 categories. Your qualification, your financials, and any of the compliance related thing, for example, facility clearance, if I need that. So that's how we kind of, create that. It's a very quick one-pager document, to be honest, just a checklist that we check off and whether or not we can go for this RFP.
And Varsha, I like that capability matrix. I think that is a great kind of suggestion to kind of write down. You said basically look at the scope, and then on one column, write down what their expectations. And then you could do a checklist in terms of, can I meet this? Can I meet that? Can I meet that?
Yeah.
So it kind of gives them a planning process so they can decide if they're not meeting those goals, whether or not to waste their time. So I think that's that capability matrix is a great tool.
Yeah, we also do that when we are looking for partnering companies. So let's just say there are 12 scope areas. My company only has 8. I don't have remaining 4. I'm going to look for partners that have those 4. So it actually helps you kind of put the entire team together. So it could be used in multiple ways.
And it also might be that they team with someone, say, if you don't have the capacity or capability, you find a partner that checks that box off.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
when you do your capability matrix, then you can still meet all those criteria because you bring those in with your partners, with your strategic partners. Yeah.
Yep. So you could do that because at the end of the day, as soon as you identify that there's the partner you're going to work with, and if the agency has not specifically said that you cannot use the subcontractor's capability for this, I mean, you can definitely showcase that as a team's experience, and that should contribute towards the experience that the agency needs.
Mm-hmm.
All right, this is one other thing for a very quick overview. So if you're confused as to how do I keep the format, how do I keep the RFP format, what should I include, what should I not include? Usually the RFPs are going to give you a sort of section-wise checklist. I mean, all proposals are going to look different, but sometimes they give you a section-wise list. Okay, you include this, 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 and this. But for the best practices, there's the link. As I was saying, that Federal Acquisition Regulation, if you look at Part 15, there are, the uniform contract formats that are available. You also get the guidelines to respond to the RFPs. So it's as I said, great resource. Takes a little bit of time to go through, but I think it's a good investment of time, half an hour every day. If you can invest in that, it's going to be great. For example, it talks about the content for a proposal, formatting requirements. I mean, there's a font requirement, to be honest. I mean, I'm really going into the nitty-gritty of it, but there is font requirement. There is the layout of the page. You're not supposed to go into the narrow margins of the page or broad margins of the page, things like that. Structure is there, if sometimes when the proposals are to be uploaded on the portal in form of the content. So sometimes you're not really, the agencies don't expect you to submit a PDF document. Sometimes you might actually need to copy paste your proposal content onto a portal. And, you should make sure that you know that beforehand, because you may end up creating a lot of infographics, which you unfortunately won't be able to copy paste on the portal. So look at these guidelines, a very good resource. Now, as I was mentioning about the market research, so here,
Varsha, you didn't click onto the format to show them the quick format.
Oh yeah, sure.
Let's just show them the quick, because it's so structured. Yeah.
I think this is
I thought we in the FAR there's a format, in the FAR there's an actual format. Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, okay. So let me see.
And this is a great resource before they even get involved with doing the RFPs, that they kind of study this as well in terms of
absolutely.
It's so structured. The RFPs is just so structured.
Let me see, it's not letting me open that document.
Maybe just go quickly over just what's contained in it so they have an idea.
Okay. All right. So this is a uniform contract format. I mean, in this one, obviously your supplies and services, pricing, cost, everything. You have to see when you're submitting a proposal, sometimes they ask you to keep your the pricing of that separate. So sometimes you're not required to combine your service proposal with your pricing proposal, because usually the pricing proposal goes to an entirely different group within the agency. So going back into it, so you're going to have your description, specification, statement of work, things like that. You're going to have, if they have any kind of compliance related document or policies that you have to acknowledge to. So also make sure when you're going through the RFP, there are certain policy document that they are going to give you, and they will ask you to sign those documents and add that in the proposal as a part of the proposal. So those are like the things that you should be careful of. And it's any of the reporting that they have asked, like monthly, quarterly reports of performance, things like that. So you can get all that detail as to what is required right here. And I'm sure there's another, hold on, there's another part of this too that gives you that information. Okay. As far as the pricing is concerned, you also have this best practice right here. So when you are proposing your pricings, although we are going to have another session for this, but the cost principles and everything else like that, I think this is going to be a very good resource again for people to look at before they propose their pricings. And there are certain regulations as to if this is a multi-year contract, you cannot exceed certain percentage of the price hike every year, or you have to necessarily include that price fluctuation window, things like that. So make sure that you're aware of those things before you participate in any of the RFP.
And Varsha, I get a lot of questions sometimes about pricing, because a lot of people are like, okay, how do I price it? So if you could share a strategy on how, because these databases are so transparent. And one of the action items that we want to recommend is that they look at how other companies are pricing their services. So I guess when you talk about the GSA, you can provide them with that as a resource to kind of study the pricing so they get an idea of how much the government is paying for those services. And I don't know if we included that in our presentation, but that's a strategy that we could recommend, that after this workshop, go to GSA and study like the technical proposal so you get an idea of those pricing and how they're structuring it.
Okay, so I mean, as far as that is concerned, although it's not a part of this presentation because we wanted to keep pricing as a separate kind of module altogether, but I can give you that information that they are, as far as the pricing of any of the related business is concerned, GSA becomes a very good source for you. So go to gsa.gov. You're going to have access to the proposals that other companies have submitted to GSA, including their costing proposals in some of the cases. Although you're going to see an inflated costing there, because that's what GSA is all about, in my opinion. In majority of the cases, you do see an inflated costing of the services, only because of all the COLA and all the other overheads that companies include. But definitely check out gsa.gov, see if you can find any of the related company. You can sort the companies by their NIC scores and everything else like that. So make sure that you're looking at some of those and getting a gist of, okay, what the other companies are offering in the same domain, what costing looks like, things like that. So other than the GSA, one of the very good ways of finding what pricing is going to be good for the agency, let's just say, for the TNM, which we call time and material kind of assignments, it could vary. But let's just say if you have a product which is more like one-time service fee, you can also look at some of the contract and USA, spending.gov. So this is the portal that's going to give you an idea as to what agencies are spending on, how much they are spending on, what their budget is like, and their spending patterns in the past. And forecast report, as Antoinette was mentioning, is also a very good source of looking at the pricing. Sometimes you can see single source, or sole source kind of contract going out for $250,000. It was a one-time procurement of a software, something like that. So it gives you a good idea as to where the pricing range is and how much agency is willing to spend for what quantity of service.
And I put in the website for gsaelibrary.gsa.gov, and they can utilize that for market research to look at other technical proposals.
Right. So we do have a market research, slide be entirely dedicated right here. So we have talked about DSDB. You're going to find the link right here. You can look at this. This is actually going to help you look at the companies and what kind of awards that they have been getting in the past. And USA Spending is going to tell you how agencies are spending money, especially with the small businesses. And some of the other research sources you're going to get right here. SBR is one of that. And GSA eLibrary, as Antoinette was saying, is a very good resource to find out, there's all the contractor directories. You'll find the companies, you'll find the proposals submitted by them. You'll find in many of the cases, their pricing proposals too. So this is, again, a very good place to kind of, begin with.
Show them an example, Varsha. Go to maybe training. In fact, they could search by NACES code. Maybe we should do professional management. What is that NACES code for professional management? 64. The NACES code for professional management.
I mean, I can just, was that 64? They don't have it. I'm just gonna search with this.
Okay.
Okay. I guess not letting me access. This website is funny at times. Adrian, could you check if you are able to access it?
Yeah, I'm
maybe
ready.
Yeah.
Let me check it real quick on my other computer.
Okay, I did get it for the information technology. I don't know how relevant that is.
2611430.
Say that again.
611430.
Yeah, it's not letting me access, but I have the access to the information technology codes. So I think the process of that is same. Once you find the, the category in which you want to go for. So for example, I'm looking at for the software licenses. I could just pick up, let's pick up a company which is small business. Antoinette, you might have to share your screen. I mean, it's not letting me access.
Okay, let me.
It's probably because of my VPN, because of my, for the deployments, we use the VPNs and sometimes it kind of prohibits us to access some certain sites.
Hold on one second, let me pull it up.
Yep.
Okay, I can share my screen.
Sure.
You see my screen? Can you see it? Hello?
We're still looking at Varsha's screen right now.
Yeah, I don't see your screen either.
You have to do the stop share first. Okay.
Okay, we'll see if you're able to do that right now.
Okay. That's the wrong thing in here. Do I should stop share?
It looks like it froze or something.
Yeah, it's kind of froze.
Something that's froze. The screen that is up, it's like it didn't load up. Okay, try it one more time.
With me, share screen, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Share screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
You see GSA eLibrary?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me go 611430. Go search. Okay. You notice how it's up, and then what happens is it takes you down to a whole listing of companies who are doing business within that NACES code. So for example, we could go to, let's see. Let me go to this one, see. Let me go to another one. I want to get a small business owner. Carly Corporation. But see how you can pop in and out and you can look at these companies and look at their technical proposals. Let me find one that management concepts. Let me see what they're doing. Let me look at the technical proposal. Contract.
You can probably just pull up the contractor price list that you see the document logo at.
I don't see one for them. Oh, I see. Okay, I see.
You see for the mass, right, for the multiple award schedule. Usually that's the one that you're gonna get, because GSA multiple award schedule is something which is like more open towards like sharing the pricing information.
Okay, so they have their hourly rates on here for
Yeah,
project
right here.
managers. Then they have their labor categories.
So they have the description of what that labor category includes.
They have
and
their
this is really
pricing and discounts, like how much they charge for these particular areas. Okay, so it's pretty detailed. You can kind of hop in and out of it. Just basically, you can hop in and out of these particular companies, look at their technical proposals. You can use GSA library. You can look at their websites. You can see if they're small business. You can look at who they're doing business with, and you can hop in and out their price list to see how much they charge the federal government. So I think that's the kind of exercise that just utilize that as a market research.
Yeah, absolutely. And the good thing is that you can actually search for the companies that are providing services with your NAICS code. So they are directly, their pricing is directly relevant to you. The scope of that, or the scale of, the scale at which that they're working, that might actually change. But at the end of the day, the kind of services that they are providing is similar. A couple of the things. So I think by now we understand the market research slightly more. The other thing which is going to be a great resource, and I cannot emphasize on this enough, leveraging the Office of Diversity, leveraging the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. The whole reason that they are there so that they can bring in more utilization from the small business. We talk about the key result area of different people. This is what their KRAs are. They have to connect with the small businesses. They have to increase the representation of these small and disadvantaged businesses within that agency. So they are, out of all the people, they are going to be more interested in talking with you. And they're having a lot of fantastic programs. They have their field reps that are there to support you. They have their events that are coming up where they share, okay, this is going to be the set aside opportunity, and small businesses can look up to these kind of opportunities coming from the agency. So this is a very good way to kind of, start building that relationship, start utilizing what agencies have made available for you. So a lot of time you'll see this URL starting with a particular agency's URL. So this means that all agencies, they have necessarily an Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Unit with them. So all the agencies have that. So this is not one office governing all the agency. This is every single agency having their own individual OSDBUs internally. So every person is going to be different for that office. Now you can always look at, when I look at this, since we are also a small business, a small and minority women-owned business, I'll always look at the key personnel. Who are the people who are going to be the people that I should connect with, start building relationship with, get in touch with, say hi and send my capabilities, just, kind of get the conversation going. So this is a great resource to start. So I would suggest everybody to kind of, utilize this for sure.
Varsha, can I ask you a question, please?
Go ahead.
Regarding the OSDBU, so this is completely different than like the SBDC or anything like that. This is within the agency, but they're not the contracting officers, but they're there to help you navigate what opportunities are there.
Absolutely. So look at it this way. So anybody who is the key personnel, let's just say as a diversity officer, inclusion officer, whoever is there, right? They are going to be your advocates to the contracting officers that, okay, there is an RFP coming up that's going to have, let's just say, 30% of the utilization goal for the small businesses. Here are the small businesses that I just met. So that's how we usually see that conversation growing, but they are your advocates within the agency.
Gotcha. Thank you. That's very good information.
I have a question to follow up with that, and thank you, because I saw HHS and I'm like, oh, that's what I need to get in touch with. But my question is, I always understood disadvantaged business to be based on the locality or where your business is based, so or registered. But that's not the case for this.
So whenever agencies, and for both, for public sector and federal, when they are categorizing a business as disadvantaged business, they take location, they take ethnicity, they take race, everything, gender as a component into that. So basically, if they don't have a separate, let's just say MBE or WBE or, things like that, they actually categorize everything. So small is one. You may or may not be in the minority communities, but disadvantage is definitely going to be where the businesses did not have that economical, leverage. So you may be a person of color, you may be a person of, of a different race that is not represented enough. You may be in a location which is hub zone, for example. We do have the hub zone certifications that also falls under the disadvantaged businesses because they were historically underutilized businesses.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so yes, to kind of summarize this, every agency has this Office of a Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization within them. All the agencies, they have their individual offices and individual reps taking care of the relationship building and guiding the small businesses. You can
Also,
actually sorry.
Varsha, I want to add that also they're also opening what they call the Office of Contract Compliance. Like I know the Georgia District Office here locally has a Office of Contract Compliance. I know Carol Thompson's over that. In that office, they have what they call a CMR, a Commercial Market Representative. They again are supposed to liaison with the contracting officers and agencies on behalf of small business owners. And
right.
I think it's kind of newly established. They've been around maybe 2 years. And a lot of people didn't know that they're downtown because downtown you have the regular SBA office ran by Terry Dennison. And then you have the Office of Contract Compliance ran by Carol Thompson. So just kind of wanted to make everybody know. And in that office is the commercial market representative is also a great resource for small business owners. So just kind of wanted to point that out.
Absolutely. And a lot of agencies would be actually very forthcoming in giving you information. So what you see on the screen is from Department of Education. And they have actually, I think they have done it wonderfully. It's just so well structured. So basically they're telling you all the steps that are involved as a small business to actually access the small business resource. You'll get this link in the presentation copy, but then they actually walk you through pretty much the entire process that we talked about. Register with SAM, get the EIN number, get the unique identification number, confirm your small business designation to the question that was previously asked as to how do you categorize your business? Is it SBA, is it hub zone, is it underutilized, minority owned, what it is? So you get the qualification of that business right here. How do you find the contracting opportunities? When you write the capability statement, I think there's going to be the whole crux of everything. When you write the capability statement, what are the things that you should include? So company name, summary, core capabilities, if you have any certifications, all the way better. Contract vehicles that you participate in. So it could be as a subcontractor, it could be as a prime contractor, but yeah, write all the vehicles that you have an understanding of, that you have an exposure of. State certifications, although they are not directly relevant, but include those if you have any of the state, local, national certifications. Even if you are, let's just say, certified by a WeBank or an MSDC chapter, include that right here. So I think that this is there's a very good link. They have done good work with this. So this link is right here. When you click on this, it's going to take you directly to the link and you can look at the resources available. One of the other thing that I wanted to cover, and I know we are I want to give Q&A enough time. So there is an upcoming webinar, and trust me, this is not those one-off things. It happens very regularly from the Office of Small Business, and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. They conduct webinars very, very frequently, to kind of increase awareness, make sure that the small businesses, they have enough information to participate in the agency. So there's one event which is happening for U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. This is on 28th of September at 2 p.m. And I think it's an hour-long, session. And this is where they are going to talk about, so their Deputy Director of Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization is going to lead this event. And I encourage literally everybody to kind of attend this. And the kind of things that they usually cover, what I have seen as a tone of these events usually is like, they let you know about various resources that are available to you. They let you know about the upcoming opportunities specifically for a small and underutilized business. So this is a great way to start. This is right here. I've included the registration link right here. So when you click on this, it's going to take you to the registration page. So yeah, check this out. And I think there are more events. When I was looking at this, there were more events related to this thing. Yeah, upcoming events, if you'll see. They're going to have a lot of different events. Doing business with General Dynamics, all different kind of events. So this for just one agency. This is just for one agency. A lot of different agencies are going to have more events and webinars coming up. It's a good investment of time, and you get to meet a lot of people. You get to meet other prime contractors and the contracting officers and supplier diversity officers. So yeah, I think this is a good resource. Check it out, register for this event, attend it. It's going to be a good utilization of your time.
Varsha, another good recommendation that we could share is the fact that
Can you go, go back, hold on.
when they actually set up an account and register, they can, because remember a while we would utilize FedBiz Ops for everything. Now they have this one central database, but basically if they register, they can get notices of all these training sessions as long as they register and they specify what kind of information they want to receive directly to their email. So can you recommend that everybody registers so they can get this information on a regular basis?
Yep, absolutely. So, so one way of accessing this information is this, or you can actually register to the centralized database where, you can pick and choose, okay, this is your next code. So this is how they, in most of the cases, right, Antoinette, this is how they identify that what kind of, service codes would work. In these kind of sessions, you will have to select the diversity status that you have. Either you're a small business or you're a disadvantaged, hub zone certified, you're WSB, things like that. According to that utilization, you're going to get the recommendation of all the trainings. They actually have the training sessions too. So they have the training sessions. Sometimes they actually tell you the resources from the PTAG standpoint. They also have for their own agency, what are the upcoming opportunities? What are the plans for utilizing these small businesses? So yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be a good thing.
So Varsha, so you can recap, we do have a question and we're going to encourage everybody to give a few minutes for Q&A. So if you wanted to wrap up and we can open up the floor to see if anybody has any other questions. I do see one.
I think yeah, just my name at the end. So you don't want to look at that. I think I'm done with my presentation.
So I do have one from Angela. Hi, Angela. She says, where do we find the VA forecast and VA website?
Okay. So for this, the simplest way, when we showed you the acquisition.gov, let me actually just go back to my right here. So when you go to acquisition.gov and you go to procurement forecast, so this is one way. So all the federal agencies, pretty much all the federal agencies, you should, okay, there you go.
Go
here.
to Health and Human Services. Oh, there's Veterans Affairs. Okay, go to Veterans Affairs.
Department of Veteran Affairs, right here. Okay, so there's the website. So it usually kind of, whenever you click onto any agency right here, it takes you to that agency's site and usually to a page where they are going to have their forecast reports. But if you don't know where the forecast reports are saved, you can always search this. So they have a very good dynamic CRM system in the CMS where you can search this. And you can actually right here. So, when I click on this link, so they are going to give me the forecast for Office of Small and Disadvantaged Organization and the forecast for the year.
Yeah.
So that's how you can look at the forecast for the quarter. for agencies.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
I think, okay, go ahead.
I took care of that.
Okay.
So this is how you can find the forecast in the agency, website.
Click on it right quick to see what comes up, Varsha. If you. Because
Okay,
every
so
forecast report looks different.
Yeah. Hold on, let me see.
There it is. Keep going down. Right here. To the left. Yeah.
Okay, what are they saying? The information is published applying for solely another information. Okay. They actually don't have a.
So maybe that this is where Ospadu comes in if she can't find it.
Hold on.
And sometimes you have to dig in some of these pages. Sometimes it comes right away, and sometimes it does not. Maybe that's it.
I think this was it. Yep, I think this is it. So they're talking about 2018. You'll need something more recent. Hold on. It's the old payment forecast. Just give me 1 second. Okay, I'm gonna open these two. Okay, sometimes you do have to do a little bit of digging before you actually get to see them. So let's take another agency, for example. I could take Health and Human Services.
And it might be that they go to USA Spending and utilize that as because they keep USA Spending, they keep up to date.
Yeah, they can get that information from usaspending.gov as well. Okay, so right here is, how, so I think they have automated it, which is great instead of you looking through the entire document. So what you can do, you can put through your NICS codes right here, so you can sort the relevant upcoming opportunities for your businesses. And typically this is how it will look like. So they give you a contract range as to from this much to this much, the contract range is going to be. What's going to be the period of performance and what kind of primary NICS codes are available, Food and Drug Administration, who is operating the funding, who's funding this, right? So you can get that right here and then procurement title right here. So when you click on it, you're gonna look at that. For example, it says recompete, which means that there is already a vendor who's working on this, who is working on providing the service, right? They have not said what is going to be the acquisition strategy, so they're primarily open. They are not saying they will set aside. They're not saying there's a single source. Then a majority of the time, and then you get the information of who's governing it. So yeah, there you go. There's your point of contact. There's a point of contact to provide information, build relationship, things like that. So yeah, this is how you access to the agency and their forecast report.
So basically, it just takes doing some digging and utilizing the GSA.
Right.
Introduce the GSA e-library, the USA Spending, DSBS, And just getting in, just looking at the databases and what's going on with the contracting opportunities. Not all procurement reports are created equal. And that's where the OSPDU office comes in as well, because they can get you in the right direction in terms of what's available, how to look at the procurement forecast, those kind of things.
Right. And as I said, I mean, it is an intensive process, and there is no set formula. It's just that you should know how and where to extract those information and how to utilize that information. So if you sometimes you feel stuck, you don't know, where to access that information. Office of Small Business is going to help you with that. They're going to let you know, okay, this is where you should find, or if there's an event coming up, this is all the way better.
So as we wrap up, it was a lot of great information. I love these strategy sessions because we could really deep dive and talk about strategy, where to go, what to look for. We want to open up the floor to any questions that anyone may have or any comments, to make sure that we covered everything and that this was a strategic workshop as you think about pursuing federal contracting. We hope that this has been helpful in terms of, let's go back to full screen. You can close your presentation, Varsha. So I'm looking at the chat, or anyone want to chime in terms of comments or resources or anything that we can, any questions that we can answer, because this was a great, I thought Varsha did a great job of providing a broad overview of RFI, RFQ, RFP, and sources sought notices. Our goal is for everybody on the call to start taking action and really pursue these opportunities and understand where your point of negotiation and your point of entry would be.
I have a comment. This is Lakila, and a question.
Can we go to full screen, Tasha? How do we?
What you'll want to do is stop the share.
Yeah, Varsha, can you stop the share?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. Okay. Here's everybody. Hey.
So you're looking at everybody's face.
Right. One, this was very informative. Thank you for hosting, and thank you, Varsha, for walking us all through this. You mentioned having a pretty large team that helps tackle these RFPs for you. For those of us that are an army of one, do you have any recommendations for how we can make this a little bit more manageable? And, I'm personally, I've reached out to the SBDC, so I have a counselor there that I'm working with. I have a PTAC that I've just recently, as of this week, started working with. And I also am a member of the Primetime course through WEOP, which has been great in terms of ramping up my learning curve. It's still a lot though. And, there's a lot of information to go through. So any suggestions for those of us that don't have as expansive of a team yet?
Okay. Yes, yet. That's very important. So my suggestion and the way that I think businesses can really tackle this, that look, you got to invest that time. You are going to be investing that time into writing the proposal. Now, you have to really evaluate what is going to be the good use. Or if you are going to write the proposal by yourself, is that a good utilization of your time? Because you have to also calculate the cost of lost opportunity because you're so busy in this work. So sometimes, in my opinion, it works if you hire a consultant to write a proposal for you. Sometimes that helps if you have that kind of flexibility to hire somebody. The other thing, which is a gradual process, which we have done internally, because right now we have that team, we did not have that team always. So what we usually do, we make sure that our capability statements are solid. We have all the information. So what we call a boilerplate, which is basically just the templates of the content that we create. So your capability statement, your past experiences, keep adding those into your boilerplate templates. So you've done the work with one of the agencies, or if you have a subcontracting work, create a case study of that, add that to your repository. So that's the work that should continuously go in so that you are not like overburdened with finding everything at once when the time comes. So make sure that the pieces of information is secured together. And if you do find it difficult to put the proposal together, I would highly recommend taking a help of a consultant. It's a 10 to 12 hours job. It's not going to cost you a lot of money. But sometimes that's the best way to go because you have the time and the ability to then focus on bigger picture.
Gotcha. And a consultant would be like on Upwork or something like that, or is there like
LinkedIn? I think LinkedIn is the best way.
LinkedIn,
because Upwork is kind of inflated. Like you can still get good people, but I think LinkedIn is a good way to go about it.
Okay, thank you.
And can we add to that, Varsha, that we were emphasizing that maybe you can still play the game at the, we call it the point of negotiation or point of entry, that if you can play the game at the sole source, the set aside or simplified acquisition, where you're building that relationship, you're having conversations where you can talk yourself into a sole source, or because I did a contract where we actually talked ourselves into a sole source contract, because we were the differentiators in terms of providing financial literacy training. And because I built a relationship with the contracting officer for the Women's Bureau, it was like, you want to do the training, this is our differentiator. And I talked myself into a sole source, which we only had to do a 2 or 3 page contract. And that is a point that you can start like getting your feet wet, or simplify acquisition, because the simplified acquisition can be a small contract for 50 to 200,000. And that maybe you start just getting your feet wet and just having conversations, just getting to know people. One of the multi-million-dollar contractors that spoke at one of our WEOP events, when I started learning about contracting, I would see her at all the events. And guess what? She was always sitting at a table talking to a contracting officer. That was how she really connected, because they loved her. They loved connecting with her. So she would be all over, and she was just in these little conversations talking to this person, that person. And I watched her finagle. And that's why I said, everybody has a point of negotiation, and that leverage that WSB, EDWSB, and have these conversations that could, hopefully you could talk yourself into a contract and understand what a simplified acquisition is. So I had another conversation with the entrepreneur who actually got a simplified acquisition. She was talking to a contracting officer. They were so impressed with her knowledge that they were like, wow. She was like, well, could you consider a sole source? Could you consider a SA? And they were just impressed with her. And she got a contract. So, and also micro purchases. They purchased with micro, which we can't go over everything in the presentation, but micro purchases. So if you get a micro purchase under $10,000, that's still money that you could utilize for your business. So all those factors that we say, don't just get stuck on one strategy. Think about your POEs from the back door, side door, front door, how you can get that business basically. And practice. I would say just practice by calling contracting officers. You may or may not get a call back. However, if you call consistently enough, they will notice you. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Okay, I don't see, okay, someone said, thank you so much. Hermes, thank you. Hermes is taking a few of our classes, so she said this was a great refresher.
Yeah.
Everybody's saying thank you. Procurement office strategy. Yes, that's a strategy. We have to, as women-owned small businesses, we have to think about we have to turn a nickel into a dollar. So we have to think about every conceivable strategy that when we study what other businesses are doing, that just makes us more powerful. Like, I didn't know Dave Ramsey was the biggest big federal contractor. So those are very important. Somebody asked, will the slides be emailed out? And yes, everybody attended this workshop. We want to get it feel. So we will go back to our Zoom report, look at, in fact, who attended this workshop, and we will send you out slides, and they will be sent out tomorrow. This is recorded, so this will also be on YouTube. So within a day or so after Latasha edits it, we'll have this on YouTube so you can refer back to as well. Because there was a lot of great information, and we just kind of, in our Pacesetter labs, want to kind of keep the conversation going so we can pull a group of awesome entrepreneurs together and talk about how, as business owners, can we grow and build our business. And maybe these are things that you didn't think about. We just want to enlighten what you're thinking and say, hey, this might be a strategy. Because procuring a simplified acquisition for $200,000 is not bad without going through a bid process. So just think about that and study those businesses, go into those databases. And also, if you think of subcontracting, could still be extremely lucrative. There's subcontractors who have $1 million plus contracts. So that's extremely lucrative as well without the headache of going for RFP. But we just wanted to make you aware of your options so you understand. And so you can, take advantage of all those options. So Varsha, you did a great overview. Thank you so much for the time. And Varsha works for a pretty big company where she's doing this on a day in, day out basis. And you did a great job of making it applicable for small businesses. I thought you did great. And really gave us some fuel for thought, things for us to really think about. You did a great job. In fact, Lakila said, great job, Varsha. Thanks for simple
Thank you.
acquisitions as a good starting point. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing the knowledge. We really appreciate the wonderful women that are part of our circle come back and share this awesome information, because 2023 is all about how we can build strong businesses, how we can get the contracts that we deserve. Kimberly said, so grateful, Varsha. Thank you for the
Oh, thank you.
we really appreciate women like you to bring that knowledge back, because we know that you work with, how many people do you work with, Varsha? Probably your team is about 30, sounds like about 30 people.
So my team is about like 45 people, but overall in the company, we have
Wow.
like well, yes. So it's mostly like just talk to everybody, make sure that things are not like blowing out of the proportion, and just make sure everything stays cool.
Yeah, see, 45 people is a lot to have on your team segmented. So, sometimes, with some of our smaller businesses, we might have one person on a team, or we may just be solo on a team. So having those tidbits of information is
I think, the key to this is to make sure that your strategy is in place, how you're going to have the visibility and how you're going to bring everything together. I think that's very important. And one thing that I would like to say to everybody is very easy to kind of get stressed out. It's very easy to get discouraged because it's a very intensive process, a very time-consuming process. It demands a lot of investment from your side, but trust me, it's that one-time investment that you'll make in making yourself knowledgeable, in finding out how to gather the market information. And trust me, it's gonna be a piece of cake. And the amount of leverage that these agencies are giving you with the amount of information that they are making available for you, it's tremendous. So it's a great thing that they have kind of shared all of that, and we should leverage that.
Another thing is that Varsha is our business advisor. So all the people on the call that are WEOP members, if you wanted to have an hour session with Varsha, we sponsor that at WEOP. So just send me an email and let me know, and you could personally have a session with her. Also, for all the WEOP members, we have these business assessments. And recently, Lakila, you took the business assessments for federal contracting. Could you share with how you found it was useful for you?
Yes, absolutely. And Varsha, I will be signing up with you. So I just added that note to do a session with you. But yes, the business assessment was great for me. And I don't mind sharing my score. It was a 25%. But the wonderful thing about that is it tells you specifically where the areas that you need to focus on and get up to speed, so that you can be so that you can be prepared to really be competitive with the contract. So coming into this without having a lot of knowledge around federal contracting, it gave me a great starting point. So I'm just kind of taking it and working through things one at a time in the competency areas from the assessment. So it was extremely helpful from that point. There were some of it was stuff I could fix like right in the moment. Like, okay, my NAICS codes. I had a couple, but there were a lot more that my business falls under. So I have that whole list now, and I'm going through and looking for the most prevalent ones. But that really came from the assessment, was even knowing where to go to determine where do we fall under, and with the certifications that we're in process for. So the assessment is awesome. If you have a chance to do it, I highly recommend it. It didn't take long, but it was well worth the time to sit and answer the questions and be very honest. Like I was, if I had a little knowledge, I still said, no, we're not there, because I wanted to get the full feedback.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I put my email in the chat box. So any of the members that want to request, as a WEOP member, you get the business assessment and you get the coaching. So just reach out to me and I'll coordinate something with Varsha. For the people on the call who are not a member, just reach out and inquire. But I want to thank Varsha for her time and talking about this. It was great. And I don't have any more questions because you were so thorough that you really went over the information.
Well, we try. There's always something that is left out, but I'm sure we are going to have more of these sessions and, more of such opportunities to connect with these wonderful women. And hopefully we are going to make success happen together.
Another session that we're excited about, we're going to do one on pricing, because I get so many questions on pricing, and then we'll actually pull up some examples so you guys can see how things are priced out and structured. So we're going to talk, we determined that we're going to do pricing, and we're probably going to cover certifications as well. because how to really leverage those with the conversations. And next week we have one on subcontracting. Because that's a really good point of entry. So we keep the I was concerned. I was like, we have a 2 hours. The 2 hours going to, but the 2 hour went so fast because I mean it just rode. So it was a good. Our session next week is only going to be an hour. So, so with that said, you guys have my email. I want to thank you for the session. Thank you for the great questions. And as you secure those contracts, let us know what's going on. And we're gonna sign off.